I cut contact with my abusive mother after she punched me in the face at a restaurant. Years later she tried to control my wedding and is now demanding access to my newborn daughter. I, 26F, barely speak to my mother, 48F, these days. Our relationship fell apart because of what she did to me over the years, starting when I was in middle school. Back then, my mother developed an addiction to painkillers after a car accident. At first, we all tried to be understanding. She was in real pain, and the medication helped. But soon, she started taking more than prescribed, and eventually moved on to anything she could find. Everything changed during my 7th grade year. Her addiction got so bad that she overdosed at work. She was a receptionist at a dental office, and they found her passed out in the bathroom during her lunch break. She lost her job that day. After losing her job, my mother started taking out her frustrations on me. Every morning on the drive to school, she would pick apart everything about me. My clothes looked terrible. My hair was a mess. I was too skinny. I walked like a boy. I talked too much. I talked too little. Nothing I did was ever right. My stepdad Jack worked long hours at his construction job, leaving early in the morning and coming home late at night. He wasn't around to see what was happening during the day. By the time he got home, my mother would act perfectly normal. The situation got worse as I got older. When I was 14, we were having dinner at a restaurant with my stepdad, my 2 younger sisters, my grandparents, my Aunt Leslie, and my cousin Becky. My mother started talking about Becky's friend's dad, saying he was irresponsible for forgetting to send out party invitations. I mentioned that it was actually Becky's friend who was supposed to mail the invitations but forgot. Without warning, my mother punched me twice in the face with a closed fist. The restaurant went silent. My stepdad grabbed her arm before she could hit me again. My aunt took me to the bathroom to clean up my bloody nose. Later that week, Becky called Child Protective Services, but nothing came of it. The social worker who visited our house seemed more interested in chatting with my mother than checking on me. When I started my period at 15, my mother declared I was now a woman and pulled me out of soccer and choir. She claimed these activities were too masculine and not ladylike. Without my sports and activities, I gained about 60 pounds over the next year. That's when the insults changed. Now I was fat, disgusting, and repulsive. She would stand outside my bedroom door while I studied, telling me no one would ever love me. I learned to completely tune her out, a skill I still have today. Someone can be talking right next to me, and if I'm focused on something else, I won't hear a word they say. People need to tap my shoulder to get my attention. When my mother realized I was tuning her out, she changed tactics. She would wait until I had to leave my room, to use the bathroom or get food, and she would follow me, telling me I should end my life because I was so worthless. This went on throughout high school. After graduation, I reconnected with my high school friend Ryan. We lived close to each other, and we both wanted to move out of our parents' houses. I was working at a hospital in patient registration, saving every penny I could. The breaking point came when I found my mother in my room, planting pills in my dresser drawer while cursing under her breath. If those pills had been found in my possession, I would have lost my job at the hospital and my future career in healthcare. When Ryan rang the doorbell moments later, I opened the door and he heard my mother yelling at me. We left immediately to look at apartments. We found a place that afternoon and signed the lease. When we returned home with the signed papers, my mother's face dropped. She couldn't believe I was actually leaving. I moved out the next day, taking only my clothes and a few personal items. My new apartment complex had a gym and tennis courts. Without my mother controlling my every move, I started exercising again. I lost around 65 pounds over the next year. I made friends in the complex. I started dating again. For the first time in years, I felt like myself. I didn't give my mother my new address. For over a year, she had no idea where I lived, and it was peaceful. Then I met Daniel. We clicked immediately, and within a month, I had met his parents. They were kind and welcoming, nothing like what I was used to. After 3 months of dating Daniel, my grandmother called me. She said my mother had heard about Daniel and wanted to meet him. My grandmother insisted that my mother had changed, that she felt terrible about how she had treated me, and that she missed me. Against my better judgment, I agreed to slowly reconnect. The first call with my mother went exactly as I expected. She immediately tried to make me feel guilty about leaving my childhood dog behind when I moved out. I reminded her that I couldn't take a dog to my apartment, and she knew that. A week later, my mother and stepdad came to visit my apartment. They brought my old dog, which was nice to see. About 10 minutes into the visit, my mother asked to use the bathroom. After she was gone for nearly 15 minutes, I went looking for her and found her going through my dresser drawers in my bedroom. I told her to leave immediately. My stepdad didn't argue. He grabbed her arm and practically dragged her out of my apartment. I told them both she was never allowed back. Daniel proposed to me after a year of dating. I called my parents, excited to share the news. Instead of congratulating me, my mother immediately started asking who would be in my wedding party. When I mentioned that Becky would be my maid of honor and her son would be the ring bearer, my mother exploded. She threatened to end Becky if she came to my wedding. The background here is important. Becky had struggled with addiction too, but unlike my mother, she got help. She went to rehab and turned her life around. I suspect they used drugs together at some point, but Becky got clean while my mother didn't. My mother also claimed Becky stole from her, but she said the same about me when I never took anything. The real issue seemed to be that Becky wouldn't let my mother see her son unsupervised, which was a smart decision. I hung up on my mother and continued calling other people to share my engagement news. But over the next few months, wedding planning became a source of dread. I honestly believed my mother would hurt Becky if given the chance. She knew where Becky lived, and she was unstable enough to follow through on her threats. After discussing it with Daniel, we decided to get married privately. We had a simple ceremony with just us and a friend who got ordained online. Daniel's parents signed as witnesses, but we kept that part secret. We then told our families we had gotten married. My mother flipped out, blaming Becky again for ruining everything. I didn't care, she didn't know about the real ceremony anyway. A month later, Daniel's mother called and offered to throw us a reception. She wanted to celebrate with us and said their family had gifts they wanted to give us. This seemed like a great compromise, a casual party where people could come and go. I called Becky, and she agreed to stop by early to drop off her gift and spend a little time with us before my mother arrived. I called my mother to see if she wanted to help plan the reception. She said yes, but only if Becky wasn't allowed to attend. I told her no. I was sick of her controlling my life, and Becky had been like a sister to me all these years. I said if she was going to be this way, then she couldn't plan or attend the reception. She responded by forbidding my stepdad and sisters from attending as well. I decided the party would go on without them. Recently, Daniel and I decided to try for a baby. I miscarried last year, which made us hesitant to try again, but we're ready now. I absolutely do not want my toxic mother around my future child. I worry she'll treat my child the way she treated me. What breaks my heart is that I love my stepdad and sisters, and they might miss out on being part of my child's life because of my mother. I'm not planning to tell anyone which hospital I'll deliver at, and I'll wait until we're home to allow visitors. I'd prefer to never tell my mother about the pregnancy, but I know she'll find out eventually. I'm worried she'll figure it out through my stepdad's insurance since I'm still on his plan as a secondary coverage. She can't call for specific information, but she'll see billing notices for ultrasounds and OB visits. My bigger concern is that she'll show up at our house. We own our home and love it here. I really don't want to move, but I will sell and move if she starts harassing us. My mother definitely needs help, but the one time I suggested she try rehab or therapy, she screamed at me until I hung up. My work and personal hospitals already know not to share any information about me because of my mother's history of calling my doctors to get my medical information. What frustrates me most is how my mother acts like my life events belong to her. I've tried cutting contact before, but family members pressured me to reconnect, claiming she had changed. She hadn't. We've had very minimal contact since the wedding discussion. I last saw her during the holidays, and the only reason I called about the marriage was to avoid a bigger conflict. If she had found out about the reception from someone else, she would have thrown a huge fit and probably harassed my mother-in-law. I talked to my stepdad yesterday and told him I'm done with my mother's behavior. He supports my decision and promised to make time to see me without her. I decided not to even bring up the baby yet, I just focused on her terrible behavior. I also warned him that any family members who give me grief about this decision will be cut off too. My stepdad did try to protect me when the abuse first started. He stood up to my mother, but she threatened to divorce him and take me away so he'd never see me again. My biological father abandoned me when I was a toddler, so her threat was credible. I would have gone with her. My stepdad did what little he could until I turned 18, and then he really stood by me. I need advice on maintaining my relationship with my stepdad and sisters while keeping my mother completely out of my life, especially when the baby comes. Has anyone dealt with something similar? Update 1. First, I want to thank everyone who commented on my original post. Your support and advice helped me feel confident in my decision to cut contact with my mother. I met with my stepdad for lunch last week. The conversation went better than expected. He fully supports my decision to keep my mother out of my life and told me he actually confronted her about her behavior toward me. He said she dismissed everything, claiming I was exaggerating and always too sensitive. When I mentioned the reception, he surprised me by saying he still plans to attend, despite my mother forbidding it. The reception has been postponed due to a scheduling conflict with the venue, but we've rescheduled for next month. My stepdad assured me he would be there, along with my sisters. He said it's time he stopped allowing my mother to dictate who he can see and when. We also discussed the insurance issue. He confirmed that my mother cannot make any changes to his insurance plan without his knowledge, so I don't need to worry about losing coverage. I didn't mention the pregnancy yet, simply stating I wasn't ready to tell people. During lunch, I asked my stepdad a question that had been on my mind for years: why does he stay with my mother? His answer was simple: she doesn't have anywhere else to go. I told him that wasn't his problem, and I would fully support him if he decided to file for divorce and kick her out. He seemed surprised and thankful for my response. He then confessed something I hadn't known: he's been wanting to file for divorce since my youngest sister turned 18 last year. He stayed in the marriage all these years to ensure my sisters and I had stability, but now that we're all adults, he's been considering his options. My stepdad shared more details about the early days of my mother's addiction. When she first started abusing me, he would confront her after separating us. I remembered hearing them argue behind closed doors, but I never knew what was said. He told me he had warned my mother that he would involve a therapist or family intervention if the abuse didn't stop, saying it wasn't fair to me. That's when she threatened divorce and taking me away, claiming he was trying to prevent her parenting style. He also explained their financial situation, which I hadn't fully understood before. We moved from a nice house to a mobile home when I was in middle school because my mother had been mismanaging their finances, not paying the mortgage despite my stepdad giving her money for it. After that, he limited her access to their accounts, giving her only cash for gas and groceries. My sisters called me after my lunch with our stepdad. They both said they would choose to maintain a relationship with me over our mother any day. My younger sister Emma mentioned that our mother has been increasingly difficult to live with since I moved out. My youngest sister Lily recently moved into her own apartment, leaving only Emma at home with our parents. Emma is looking for an apartment now too. She asked if I would help her search on my days off, which I happily agreed to. We spent last Saturday looking at places near my neighborhood. She found a small one-bedroom that's within her budget, and she's submitting an application today. In other news, Daniel and I had our first prenatal appointment yesterday. The doctor confirmed I'm about 8 weeks pregnant. We saw the heartbeat on the ultrasound, which was amazing after our previous loss. The doctor said everything looks healthy so far. I've been thinking about how to handle family visits after the baby is born. Daniel and I decided we won't announce the birth until we're home from the hospital. We'll invite my stepdad and sisters to meet the baby at our house, where we can control who enters our home. I've also taken steps to increase our home security. We installed cameras at our front and back doors, and I've spoken with our neighbors about not giving any information about us to people they don't know. Our closest neighbors know the situation with my mother and have promised to call me if they see her around our house. I received a text from my grandmother yesterday, asking why I haven't called my mother recently. I replied simply that I need space from her for my mental health. My grandmother responded that family should always stick together and that I should forgive my mother because she's the only mother you'll ever have. I didn't respond to that message. My Aunt Leslie called me afterward, saying my grandmother had been complaining to her about my stubbornness. To my surprise, my aunt defended my decision. She reminded me that she was there during the restaurant incident and many other instances of my mother's abuse. She said she regrets not doing more to help me when I was younger and offered her full support now. I'm still nervous about how things will play out over the coming months, especially as my pregnancy progresses and becomes more obvious. I'm not showing yet, but I will be soon. I know it's only a matter of time before word gets back to my mother. For now, I'm focusing on staying healthy, supporting Emma and Lily as they establish independence from our mother, and maintaining my relationship with my stepdad. The reception is coming up in a few weeks, and I'm looking forward to celebrating with the people who truly care about me. I'll update again after the reception or if anything significant happens with my mother. Update 2. A lot has happened since my last update. The reception was yesterday, and it went better than I expected, though not without drama. First, Emma successfully moved into her apartment 3 weeks ago. It's about a 10-minute drive from my house, which has been wonderful. My stepdad visits her regularly without my mother, and we've been able to have family dinners with him, my sisters, and Daniel without the stress of my mother's presence. As for the reception, we held it at a small event space near Daniel's parents' house. Becky arrived early as planned, along with her son. We had about an hour together before she left, avoiding any potential confrontation with my mother. She gave us a beautiful handmade quilt as a wedding gift. My stepdad and sisters arrived shortly after Becky left. My mother didn't come with them, which was a relief. My stepdad later told me she had thrown a massive tantrum that morning when he and my sisters were getting ready to leave. She tried to physically block the door, but my stepdad simply walked around her and left anyway. My sisters followed him out to the car while my mother screamed from the doorway. The reception itself was lovely. About 50 people attended, mostly Daniel's family, friends from work, and neighbors. My grandmother showed up briefly, staying just long enough to give us a card and make a pointed comment about my mother's absence. I simply thanked her for coming and moved on to other guests. Everything was going smoothly until about halfway through the event. I was talking with Daniel's aunt when I noticed a commotion near the entrance. My mother had shown up uninvited and was trying to get past Daniel's father, who was blocking the doorway. She appeared intoxicated and was causing a scene. Daniel immediately went to help his father while I stayed back. My stepdad quickly joined them, and together they convinced my mother to leave without too much disruption. Most guests didn't even notice what happened. My stepdad returned looking tired but determined. He apologized for the interruption and said he would handle things with my mother from now on. He spent the rest of the reception with us, even dancing with me during the father-daughter dance we had planned. That moment meant everything to me. After the reception, my stepdad pulled me aside and told me he had made a decision. He was filing for divorce. He said watching my mother try to ruin yet another important day in my life was the final straw. He had already spoken with a lawyer and would be serving my mother with papers next week. Now for the pregnancy update. I'm 16 weeks along and definitely showing. I had my anatomy scan last week, and everything looks healthy. Daniel and I found out we're having a girl. We decided to tell my stepdad and sisters about the pregnancy after the reception. Their reactions were priceless. My stepdad teared up, and my sisters squealed with excitement. They all promised to keep the news from my mother for as long as possible. Unfortunately, that wasn't very long. Somehow, my mother found out about the pregnancy 3 days ago. I suspect my grandmother told her, though she denies it. My mother sent me a barrage of text messages, alternating between demanding to be involved in her granddaughter's life and accusing me of keeping secrets to hurt her. I blocked her number after the first few messages. An hour later, she started calling from different numbers. I blocked those too. Then she showed up at my workplace. Thankfully, security was already aware of the situation and escorted her out before she could reach my department. The most concerning incident happened yesterday morning before the reception. I came out to my car to find all 4 tires slashed. There was no note or direct evidence it was my mother, but the timing seems too coincidental. We filed a police report, though I doubt anything will come of it without proof. We're now seriously considering moving before the baby arrives. Daniel and I spent this morning looking at houses in a neighboring town, about 30 minutes from our current location. We found a few possibilities, though the thought of moving while pregnant isn't appealing. My stepdad offered another solution. He plans to move out of the house he shares with my mother as part of the divorce. He suggested looking for a place with a mother-in-law suite or guest house where he could live temporarily. That way, he could help protect us and be close to his granddaughter when she arrives. We're considering this option. On a positive note, my doctor referred me to a high-risk pregnancy specialist due to my previous miscarriage. The specialist has been wonderful, taking all my concerns seriously, including the stress caused by my mother. The office has added special notes to my file about privacy concerns, and they've implemented extra verification steps for anyone calling about my appointments. For now, we're taking it day by day. The restraining order paperwork is sitting on my desk, ready to file if my mother continues her behavior. My stepdad keeps me updated on her actions, which helps me feel prepared for whatever might come next. I'll update again after the baby arrives, or sooner if something significant happens with my mother or stepdad's divorce. Update 3. First, the good news, my daughter Olivia was born 3 weeks ago. She's healthy, weighing 7 pounds 4 ounces at birth, and absolutely perfect. The delivery went smoothly, and we were able to keep it completely private. We didn't tell anyone except Daniel's parents when I went into labor, and we waited until we were home to announce her arrival. My stepdad and sisters were the first visitors after Daniel's parents. They came bearing gifts and tears of joy. My stepdad couldn't stop smiling as he held Olivia for the first time. He's already talking about teaching her to fish when she's older. Now for the updates on everything else. We decided not to move after all. Instead, we invested in better security, a proper alarm system, more cameras, and reinforced locks on all doors and windows. Our neighbors have been incredibly vigilant as well, keeping an eye out for my mother or any suspicious activity. My stepdad's divorce is progressing. He moved out 2 months ago into a small apartment about 5 minutes from our house. The divorce has been contentious, with my mother refusing to sign papers and making increasingly erratic demands. She's trying to claim my stepdad abandoned her and is seeking alimony, despite never working consistently throughout their marriage. My mother found out about Olivia's birth through my grandmother, who saw pictures my sisters had posted on social media. Within hours, my mother started bombarding my phone with messages demanding to see her grandbaby. I didn't respond to any of them. 2 days after Olivia's birth, a large package arrived at our door. It contained baby clothes, toys, and a note from my mother acting as if nothing had ever happened between us. I donated everything to a women's shelter and didn't acknowledge the gift. 5 days after Olivia was born, my mother showed up at our house while Daniel was at work. I was alone with the baby when I heard pounding on the front door. Through the security camera, I saw my mother on the porch, yelling that she had a right to see her granddaughter. I called my stepdad, who arrived within minutes. He convinced her to leave by threatening to call the police. The next day, we filed for a restraining order. With documentation of the tire slashing incident, workplace disruption, and front porch confrontation, plus statements from my stepdad and sisters about her past behavior, the judge granted a temporary order. The hearing for a permanent restraining order is scheduled for next month. My mother retaliated by spreading rumors throughout the family. According to my aunt, my mother has been telling everyone that I'm unstable, that my stepdad turned me against her, and that I'm keeping Olivia from her out of spite. Most family members know better, but a few distant relatives have reached out with concerns about my behavior. Last week, my mother left a voicemail for Daniel, crying and begging him to talk sense into me. She claims she's been sober for months, which my stepdad confirms is not true, and that she deserves a second chance. Daniel deleted the message without responding. Yesterday, my grandmother called, asking me to reconsider allowing my mother to meet Olivia. She suggested a supervised visit at her house, with her present the entire time. I declined, explaining that nothing has changed. My mother hasn't acknowledged her behavior, sought help for her addiction, or shown any genuine remorse. My grandmother reluctantly accepted my decision, though I could tell she was disappointed. On a brighter note, Emma and Lily have been amazing aunts. They visit frequently, bringing home-cooked meals and offering to hold Olivia so I can shower or nap. Daniel's parents have also been incredibly supportive, respecting our boundaries and helping without overstepping. My stepdad stops by almost daily, sometimes just for a few minutes to peek at Olivia. He told me yesterday that watching me become a mother has made him even more certain of his decision to divorce my mother. He said he wishes he had left years ago, when I was still living at home, but he's grateful we've rebuilt our relationship. For anyone wondering about my job, I'm on maternity leave until January. My workplace has been understanding about the situation with my mother and has maintained the security protocols established during my pregnancy. As for me, I'm adjusting to motherhood one day at a time. Looking at Olivia, I'm more certain than ever that breaking the cycle of abuse was the right choice. I will never let her experience what I went through. The restraining order hearing is coming up, and I'm gathering all necessary documentation with help from my stepdad. While part of me wishes things could be different, I've accepted that my mother is unlikely to change. My focus now is on protecting my daughter and creating the stable, loving home I never had. Thank you to everyone who has followed my story and offered support. Your encouragement helped me stay strong through a difficult pregnancy and family situation. I probably won't post another update unless something significant changes with my mother, but know that Olivia is thriving, and our little family is doing well despite the challenges. Now let's move to the next story. Story 2. Dad put his new wife's name on house deed, lost everything, and begged us for help. We were hesitant but gave him one last chance. His actions 3 months later leave us in tears. My dad, 52M, chose his new wife, 34F, over me, 25F, and my sister, 19F. Now he wants our help. I never thought I'd be writing this, but here I am, caught in a family drama that feels like it's straight out of a soap opera. My dad has always been the type to prioritize his romantic relationships over his kids, but recent events have taken things to a whole new level. To give you some background, my parents divorced when I was just 4 years old. I don't remember much about their marriage, but I do recall a lot of shouting and door slamming. After the divorce, my mom moved across the country for work, and I stayed with my dad. He remarried pretty quickly to my stepmom, Mary, when I was 6. Mary wasn't terrible, but she definitely came first in Dad's eyes. I remember this one time when I was 12, and I accidentally spilled grape juice on Mary's favorite white blouse. It was an honest mistake. I tripped over our cat, Whiskers, who had a habit of weaving between people's legs. Instead of defending me or at least trying to calm Mary down, Dad just stood there and let her yell at me for what felt like hours. She called me clumsy, careless, and even suggested I did it on purpose. When I tried to talk to Dad about it later, he just said, "We have to keep Mary happy. She's the most important person in this family." That moment stuck with me for years. Things got even more complicated when my sister Emily was born when I was 6. I was excited to be a big sister, but it quickly became clear that Dad wasn't really interested in being a hands-on parent. He was always too busy with work or spending time with Mary. I ended up taking care of Emily a lot, which wasn't fair, but I didn't want her to feel as unloved as I did. I remember one particular incident when Emily was about 3. She had a high fever and was crying all night. I kept going to Dad's room to ask for help, but he and Mary just told me to handle it myself. I ended up staying up all night, putting cool cloths on Emily's forehead and trying to get her to drink water. The next morning, when Emily was finally feeling better, Dad praised me for being such a good big sister without acknowledging that it shouldn't have been my responsibility in the first place. When I was 16, Mary left my dad for another guy, her yoga instructor, of all people. Dad was devastated, but instead of turning to us for support, he threw himself into work and dating. It was like he was trying to prove something to himself or to Mary. He'd bring home a new girlfriend every few weeks, and we were expected to be nice to them no matter what. Some of them were okay, but others were really mean to us when Dad wasn't around. There was this one woman, Tiffany, who would accidentally break my things and then gaslight me about it. She once threw my favorite mug, a gift from my mom, into the trash and then told Dad I was being dramatic when I got upset about it. Dad believed her over me, of course. I moved out as soon as I turned 18. I couldn't take the revolving door of stepmom wannabes anymore. I got a scholarship to a state college and worked part-time to make ends meet. It was tough, but it was better than living at home. I took Emily with me when she was 16. She'd been begging me to let her live with me for months, and I finally gave in when I caught Dad's girlfriend at the time going through Emily's diary. Dad didn't even seem to notice we were gone most of the time. He'd call maybe once a month, usually to complain about his latest breakup or ask for money, which I never had to give. 2 years ago, Dad met Melissa. She's only 34, which is closer to my age than his. At first, I thought maybe she'd be different. She seemed nice enough, and she made an effort to get to know Emily and me. But then Dad started changing. He stopped calling us altogether unless Melissa was there. He'd cancel plans with us at the last minute if Melissa wanted to do something else. When we did see him, all he talked about was how amazing Melissa was and how we needed to respect her as our new mom, which was gross, considering she's only 9 years older than me. The last straw was at Emily's high school graduation. Dad had promised he'd be there. Emily was so excited, she'd even saved him a special seat right up front. But then Melissa decided she wanted to go on a cruise that week. Instead of telling her no or trying to change the dates, Dad just didn't show up. He didn't even call. Emily was heartbroken. I found her crying in the bathroom after the ceremony, still in her cap and gown. After that, Emily and I decided to cut contact with Dad. We told him we were done being second best and that he needed to figure out his priorities. He got really angry and said we were being selfish and ungrateful. He even brought up all the times he'd sacrificed for us, like the time he missed a work conference to take me to the hospital when I broke my arm, which happened because he'd left me unsupervised at age 8 to go on a date with Mary. We haven't talked to him in over a year. It's been hard, but Emily and I have gotten even closer. I've been working as a teacher at a local elementary school, and Emily just started her freshman year of college. We've been doing okay on our own, supporting each other through the tough times. But last week, Dad showed up at my apartment out of the blue. He looked terrible, unshaven, clothes all wrinkled, and he smelled like he hadn't showered in days. When I asked what was going on, he broke down crying right there in the hallway. Apparently, Melissa had been cheating on him with her ex-boyfriend for months. When Dad found out, she laughed in his face and said she'd never really loved him. She was just using him for his money. They got into a huge fight, and Melissa kicked him out of the house. The thing is, Dad had put Melissa's name on the deed to his house as a sign of trust. He'd also been paying for her expensive shopping habits and trips. He showed me his bank statements. He'd spent over $50,000 on her in the past year alone. Now he's lost everything: his house, his savings, even his car, which was in Melissa's name. Dad begged me to let him stay with us. He said he had nowhere else to go and that family should stick together. When I reminded him how he treated us, he got defensive and said that was all in the past and we should forgive him. He brought up times from when we were little, like the summer he taught me to ride a bike or the time he helped Emily with her science fair project, as if those few good memories could erase years of neglect and emotional abuse. I told him I needed time to think about it and that I had to talk to Emily first. He's been calling and texting nonstop since then, alternating between guilt-tripping us and making grand promises about how things will be different this time. He's even brought up the idea of suing Melissa, but I don't think he has a legal leg to stand on. Emily is furious and doesn't want anything to do with him. She says she's finally started to heal from all the hurt he caused, and she doesn't want to open those wounds again. Part of me feels bad for Dad, but another part of me thinks this is karma for how he's treated us over the years. I don't know if I can trust him not to hurt us again if we let him back into our lives. What should I do? Am I a terrible daughter if I don't help him? I'm worried that if we do help, he'll just fall for the next woman who comes along and abandon us all over again. But he is still our dad, and I feel guilty about potentially leaving him homeless. Any advice would be appreciated. Update 1. Thank you all for your supportive comments and advice. It's been about 2 weeks since my last post, and a lot has happened. I wanted to give an update on the situation with my dad. After talking it over with Emily, we decided to meet with Dad to hear him out. We chose a neutral location, a coffee shop near my apartment. When we got there, Dad already looked a bit better than he had when he first showed up at my place. He'd shaved and was wearing clean clothes, at least. We sat down, and I told Dad that before we discussed anything else, we needed to talk about the past. I explained how hurt we'd been by his constant prioritizing of his relationships over us. I brought up specific instances: missing Emily's graduation, canceling plans last minute, even that time with Mary and the juice incident when I was a kid. At first, Dad got defensive. He tried to justify his actions, saying he was just trying to keep the peace or that we were exaggerating things. But as we kept talking, he seemed to deflate a bit. He admitted that he'd made mistakes and said he regretted a lot of his choices. Emily, who had been quiet up until this point, suddenly spoke up. She told Dad about how she used to cry herself to sleep when she was little, wondering why he didn't love her enough to spend time with her. She talked about how she felt like she didn't even have a dad most of the time, and how much it hurt to see him dote on his girlfriends while ignoring her. She brought up a memory I had completely forgotten about. When Emily was 10, she had been cast as the lead in her school play. She had been practicing for weeks, so excited to show Dad her performance. On the night of the play, Dad promised he'd be there. Emily kept looking out into the audience, waiting for him to arrive. But he never showed up. Later, we found out he had gone to a concert with his girlfriend at the time. Emily said she never tried out for another play after that. I could see that Emily's words really hit Dad hard. He started crying, which made me uncomfortable because I'd rarely seen him show emotion like that before. He apologized over and over, saying he'd been selfish and stupid. We talked for hours. Dad explained more about what happened with Melissa. Apparently, she'd been manipulating him for a long time, isolating him from his friends and convincing him that we were the problem in his life. He said he realized now how wrong he'd been to believe her. He told us about how Melissa had convinced him to retire early from his job as an accountant, saying they could live off his savings and investments. She'd then systematically gone through his finances, convincing him to sell off stocks and dip into his retirement fund for her shopping sprees and vacations. By the time he realized what was happening, it was too late. Dad also admitted that he'd been struggling with depression for years, even before he met Melissa. He said he'd always felt inadequate as a father and had used relationships as a way to avoid dealing with his own issues. It wasn't an excuse for his behavior, but it did help explain some things. In the end, we came to a decision. We told Dad that we weren't ready to have him move in with us. The trust just isn't there yet. But we also didn't want to leave him with nothing. So we made a deal. 1. We'd help him find a small apartment and pay the first month's rent. 2. He has to get a job within 30 days and start paying his own way. 3. He has to attend family counseling with us once a week. 4. No dating for at least 6 months while he focuses on rebuilding his relationship with us. 5. If he breaks any of these conditions, we're done, no more chances. Dad agreed to everything. He seemed genuinely grateful for the opportunity. We helped him move into a tiny studio apartment last week. It's not much, but it's a start. He didn't have many belongings left after Melissa kicked him out, so we took him to a thrift store to get some basic necessities. I'm still feeling conflicted about all of this. Part of me is hopeful that maybe this time will be different. But another part of me is waiting for the other shoe to drop. I keep thinking about all the times in the past when Dad would promise to change, only to revert back to his old ways as soon as a new woman came into his life. Emily is even more skeptical than I am. She's agreed to the family counseling, but she's made it clear that she's not expecting much. She told me privately that she's only doing this for my sake, which makes me feel guilty. I don't want her to feel pressured into a relationship with Dad if she's not ready. We had our first counseling session yesterday. It was intense. A lot of old hurts came up, and there were definitely some tears, mostly from Dad, surprisingly. The counselor seems good, though. She's not letting Dad off easy and is really making him confront his past behavior. One thing that came up in the session was Dad's relationship with his own father. Apparently, my grandfather was an alcoholic who was rarely around. Dad said he never learned how to be a good father because he never had a positive male role model. It doesn't excuse his actions, but it does provide some context. Dad has been applying for jobs nonstop. He's even agreed to take a night shift at a local warehouse if he can't find anything else soon. It's weird seeing him actually put effort into something that's not a relationship for once. He's been sending me his job applications to review, which is a strange reversal of our usual roles. I'm trying to stay cautiously optimistic, but it's hard. Every time my phone rings, I worry that it's going to be Dad telling me he's met someone new or that he's changed his mind about everything. But so far, he's sticking to our agreement. Emily is still keeping her distance, which I completely understand. She texts Dad occasionally but hasn't seen him in person since that day at the coffee shop. I'm not pushing her either way, she needs to do what's best for her own mental health. That's where things stand for now. I'll update again if anything major changes. Thanks again for all your support and advice. It's really helped me feel less alone in all of this. Update 2. It's been about a month since my last update, and I wanted to share how things have been going with my dad. To be honest, it's been a roller coaster of emotions. The good news is that Dad managed to find a job within the 30-day deadline we set. It's not glamorous, he's working as a night stalker at a grocery store, but he seems genuinely proud of himself for sticking to it. He's been paying his rent on time and even started putting a little money aside each week. It's strange to see him being responsible with money after years of watching him blow through his savings on girlfriends and impulsive purchases. We've continued with the family counseling sessions. They're still pretty intense, but I feel like we're making some progress. Dad's been more open about his past behaviors and the reasons behind them. He talked about how his own parents were never really there for him emotionally, and how he never learned how to be a good father. In one session, he brought up a memory from when I was about 5 years old. It was shortly after he and Mom had divorced, and I was having a hard time adjusting. He said he remembered me crying and asking why Mommy didn't love us anymore. Instead of comforting me, he'd gotten angry and told me to stop being a baby. He said he realizes now that he was projecting his own hurt and insecurities onto me, but at the time, he just didn't know how to handle a crying child. Emily has started attending the sessions more regularly. She's still very guarded around Dad, but she's at least willing to be in the same room as him now. Last week, she actually laughed at one of his jokes, which felt like a huge step. It was a stupid dad joke about a penguin walking into a bar, but seeing them share a moment of levity was really nice. But it hasn't all been smooth sailing. About 2 weeks ago, Dad called me in a panic. He'd run into Melissa at the grocery store where he works. She'd made some snide comments about him being a stock boy and then tried to convince him to give their relationship another shot. She told him she'd made a mistake and that she missed him. Dad was really shaken up by it. I was worried he might backslide, but he surprised me. Instead of falling for Melissa's manipulation again, he called me for support. We talked for hours that night, and he kept saying how grateful he was for the second chance we'd given him. He said he never wanted to risk losing us again. Emily had a harder time with the Melissa incident. She was convinced Dad was going to run back to her and abandon us again. It took a lot of reassurance from both me and our counselor to calm her down. I think she's still waiting for Dad to mess up somehow. One positive development is that Dad has started showing more interest in our lives. He asks about Emily's classes and my work. He even remembered my birthday last week, something he hasn't done in years. He couldn't afford a big gift, But he made me a card and baked a, slightly lopsided, cake. It wasn't much, but the effort meant a lot. We've had a few family dinners at my place. They're still a bit awkward, but they're getting better. Dad's trying to learn how to cook, which has led to some pretty hilarious disasters. Last week, he tried to make spaghetti and somehow managed to set off the smoke alarm. But even when the food is terrible, it's nice to see him making an effort. I'm still cautious about fully trusting Dad again. There are moments when I catch myself waiting for him to revert to his old behaviors. But so far, he's been sticking to our agreement and really seems to be trying to change. Emily is slowly warming up to him. She agreed to let him come to one of her college volleyball games next month. It's a small step, but an important one. She's still hesitant about spending one-on-one time with him, but she's making an effort in her own way. As for me, I'm taking things one day at a time. I'm proud of the progress we've made, but I'm also trying to keep my expectations realistic. I know we have a long way to go before our family is truly healed. That's where things stand for now. I'll update again if there are any major developments. Thanks again to everyone who's been following our story and offering support. It really means a lot. Update 3. It's been about 3 months since my last update, and I wanted to share how things have been going with my dad and our family situation. Overall, I'd say we're still making progress, but it hasn't been without its challenges. Dad has been sticking to his job at the grocery store and even got a small promotion to shift supervisor. He seems to be taking pride in his work, which is nice to see. He's been telling us about some of the friendships he's forming with his coworkers, which I think has been good for him. Our family counseling sessions have continued, and they've been really eye-opening. We've been digging into a lot of deep-seated issues, and it's been tough but necessary. Dad's been confronting a lot of his past behaviors and working on understanding why he acted the way he did. It's not always easy to hear, but I appreciate his honesty. In one particularly emotional session, Dad opened up about his childhood. He told us about how his father would often disappear for days on drinking binges, leaving Dad to take care of his younger siblings. He said he always swore he'd be a better father than that, but somehow he ended up repeating the cycle of neglect in his own way. It doesn't excuse what he did, but it helps me understand a bit better. Emily has been more involved lately. She and Dad had a big breakthrough in one of our sessions when she finally told him how much it hurt her when he missed her graduation. Dad broke down and apologized sincerely, admitting that he'd been selfish and short-sighted. It was a really emotional moment for all of us. Emily later told me that it was the first time she felt like Dad really understood how much he had hurt her. We've been trying to do more family activities together. Last month, we went on a camping trip over a weekend. It was Dad's idea, actually. He remembered how much Emily and I used to love camping when we were kids, before he got too busy with work and relationships. The trip wasn't perfect, Dad forgot the mosquito repellent, and we all got eaten alive, but it was fun to spend time together outside of our usual settings. We even managed to laugh about some of the mishaps, like when Dad tried to start the campfire and ended up singeing his eyebrows. There have been some bumps in the road, though. Dad ran into one of his old girlfriends at a local bar. He was there for dinner, not drinking. She tried to convince him to go out with her, and for a moment, I think he was tempted. But he called me right after and told me what happened. He said he realized that no relationship was worth risking his progress with us. I was proud of him for that, but it also reminded me how fragile our situation still is. Emily is still having trust issues, which is understandable. She gets anxious whenever Dad doesn't answer his phone right away, worrying that he's found someone new and is going to disappear again. We're working on this in therapy, but it's a slow process. Our counselor has suggested some trust-building exercises, which we're trying to implement. As for me, I'm cautiously optimistic. There are days when I feel really hopeful about our family's future, and other days when I wonder if we're kidding ourselves. But overall, I think we're moving in the right direction. I've noticed that I'm less tense around Dad now, and I'm actually starting to enjoy our time together sometimes. Dad's been talking about wanting to make amends with some of his old friends that he pushed away during his relationship with Melissa. I'm encouraging him to take it slow and focus on our family first, but I think it's a good sign that he's thinking about rebuilding other relationships too. We're planning a small celebration for Dad's 6-month sobriety next month. He wasn't a heavy drinker before, but he's completely stopped since everything happened with Melissa. It feels like an important milestone to acknowledge. That's where things stand for now. It's not perfect, and we still have a long way to go, but we're making progress. Thanks again to everyone who's been following our story and offering support. Your encouragement has meant a lot during this challenging time.